It was 2:30 a.m. when the sharp, jarring sound of his phone vibrating on the nightstand shattered the quiet stillness of our bedroom. The glow of the screen lit up the darkness, and my eyes adjusted just in time to catch the name that flashed across it. Katya. First, I thought I was still dreaming. My mind clung to the fog of sleep, and for a brief moment, I convinced myself it was a mistake. Maybe it was spam, a wrong number, or some kind of late-night work issue. But the weight of reality pressed on my chest when I saw how quickly he grabbed the phone. Not just quickly, desperately. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice rough from sleep but sharp with suspicion. "Nobody," he muttered too fast. He swiped to decline the call and placed the phone face down on the nightstand like it might burn him. "Just a wrong number. Go back to sleep, babe." I lay there for a moment staring at him. His back was turned to me. His body stiff like every muscle had locked into place. My heart was pounding harder than it should have been for such a simple mistake. The quiet buzz of suspicion hummed in my chest, growing louder with each second. Katya. It wasn't just the name. It was his reaction, too fast, too defensive, too unnatural. A man who has nothing to hide doesn't turn to stone over a wrong number. But I said nothing. I turned over, pulling the blanket tighter around me, but sleep never came. Not that night. Days passed, but something had shifted between us. I knew it. I could feel it in the way he glanced at his phone a little too often, how he started taking it with him to the bathroom when he never used to. The silence at night was louder than ever. We used to fall asleep talking, laughing, or just listening to each other breathe. Now it felt like I was sharing a bed with a stranger. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just one call. People get wrong numbers all the time, right? But then it happened again. It was just after midnight, and I was wide awake this time. I don't know what kept me up. Maybe my gut already knew. I lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, counting each second until, like clockwork, his phone lit up. Katya. The name hit me like ice water to the face. I didn't hesitate this time. Before he could reach for it, I grabbed it off the nightstand. His eyes snapped open like he'd been awake this whole time. "Give it to me," he hissed, sitting up so fast it startled me. "Who is Katya?" I asked, holding the phone just out of his reach. "It's nobody, I told you," he said, his voice low, measured, like he was trying not to scare a wild animal. "Just give me the phone." My hand tightened around it. "A wrong number doesn't call twice." He stared at me like he was trying to decide how much of the truth I could handle, or how much of it he could get away with. But before he could say a word, I answered the call. "Hello." My voice was calm, too calm for the storm building inside me. There was a pause on the other end. For a second I thought she might hang up. But then I heard her voice. Her voice. "Hi. Is Liam there?" The softness of her tone twisted something in my gut. She didn't sound like a stranger fumbling with the wrong number. She sounded like someone with a purpose. "Who is this?" I asked. Another pause. This one was longer, heavier. "This isn't a mistake," she finally said, her voice firm now. "I need to talk to him." I sucked in a breath so sharp it burned. My vision blurred with heat. Not from tears but from something darker, something hotter. I felt his eyes on me, his body tense like he was ready to pounce. I didn't look at him. I kept my gaze forward, locked on the wall. "Well," I said slowly, forcing every ounce of control into my words, "why don't we both talk to him together?" I lowered the phone from my ear, my eyes finally snapping to his. His face drained of color like he'd seen a ghost. His lips parted but no sound came out. He just sat there, frozen in place, his eyes darting between me and the phone in my hand. I pressed the speaker button. "Go ahead, Katya," I said, tilting my head toward him. "He can hear you now." Silence. The kind of silence that presses on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. For a moment I wondered if she'd hung up, but then her voice cut through the air like a blade. "Liam," she said softly, but her tone was loaded with meaning. "Are you going to say something or should I?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes dropped to his lap like a child caught stealing. My heart wasn't beating anymore, it was slamming. Every single beat. "Katya," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Who are you to my husband?" There was another pause, but this time it was different. This wasn't hesitation. This was calculation. "I'm someone he should have told you about," she said, Her voice too calm, too steady, like she'd been waiting for this moment. But I guess you know that now. My body went numb. My mind screamed at me to react. Yell, cry, throw the phone, something. But I felt frozen, detached from my own body. Slowly, I turned to look at him. Well, I asked, my voice barely a whisper but sharp enough to cut glass. Say something. His eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time I saw it, not guilt, not fear. Shame. He reached for me, but I pulled back like his touch was poison. Wait, babe, just. Don't you dare call me that. My voice cracked like thunder, and for a moment I thought I might actually break. But I didn't. Instead, I stood staring down at him like he was something I'd stepped on. Something I never wanted to touch again. You've got her on the line, I said, my voice eerily calm now. Go ahead, Liam. Talk to her. Tell her everything you've been too much of a coward to tell me. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, head down, eyes on his hands, like if he stayed still enough, maybe I'd disappear. But I wasn't going anywhere. Katya, I said, bringing the phone to my lips. You can have him. And with that I hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. No shouting, no screaming. Just the crushing weight of everything that had been broken in that one moment. I walked to the bathroom, shutting the door behind me. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my own reflection. My chest was tight, my breath shallow, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Because I realized something right then and there. I didn't lose him. He lost me. And maybe he'd figure that out one day. But by then it would be too late. I heard him knock softly on the door, his voice muffled on the other side. Baby, please, can we talk? I stared at my reflection, eyes sharp and hard like I didn't recognize myself anymore. No, I didn't want to talk. Not now. Not ever. Talk to Katya, I said, loud enough for him to hear. I ran the tap, letting the cold water wash over my hands. Felt good. Clean. New. I stayed in that bathroom until the sun came up, and when I finally walked out, he was gone. I stood in the middle of the bedroom, the early morning light filtering through the blinds in pale gray stripes. The air was heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. My eyes scanned the room like I was seeing it for the first time. The unmade bed, his sweatshirt tossed over the chair, his favorite watch still lying on the dresser. It was all so painfully normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. The phone call played on repeat in my mind. Her voice, smooth but deliberate, echoing like a distant bell. This isn't a mistake. Those 4 words stuck in my chest like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Every time I thought about it, I felt it all over again. The burn of betrayal, the crushing realization that I'd been living next to a man I didn't really know. I walked over to his side of the bed and stared at the nightstand. The phone wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. He'd taken it with him. I knew why. I'd seen that look in his eyes when I answered the call. Panic. Not fear of losing me, no, that would have been too hopeful. It was fear of exposure, of being caught, of having his double life unravel in front of him. Men like him don't fear loss. They fear consequences. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed against my knees, trying to breathe slowly, trying to think. But my mind wasn't interested in logic. It replayed every small moment I'd ignored over the past few months. The sudden late nights at work. The extra trips to run errands. The way he'd started turning his phone face down every time he put it on the table. All the little red flags I brushed off with excuses like, he's just tired. Or worse, he'd never do that to me. Turns out he would. And he did. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally stood up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and walked into the kitchen. The silence of the house was suffocating. Every creak of the floor, every distant hum of the fridge, every clink of the spoon against my coffee mug felt amplified. I leaned on the counter, staring at the dark liquid swirling in my cup. I didn't even want it, but my hands needed something to do. What now? I'd always thought that if I ever caught him cheating, I'd scream, cry, throw things. But here I was, calm and hollow, like something inside me had already gone numb. My phone buzzed on the counter, jolting me out of my thoughts. For a second, my heart jumped to my throat. But it wasn't him. Just a notification from some app one didn't care about. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling mindlessly on my phone. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe an answer, maybe a distraction. I typed her name into the search bar without even thinking. Katya. Felt ridiculous, but I had to know. I wanted to see her face. I needed to. There were too many results. Instagram profiles, Facebook pages, random accounts with no photos. I didn't even know her last name. For a moment I thought about calling her back. Just to ask. Just to see what she'd say. My finger hovered over the call log. Don't do it, I told myself. Don't give her that power. But the curiosity itched at me like a scab I couldn't stop picking. That's when the front door opened. The sound made me freeze. The soft click of the latch, the familiar creak of the hinges. He was home. I didn't look up right away. I sat there, fingers pressed against the edge of my phone, my eyes locked on the empty mug in front of me. I listened to the sound of his keys hitting the table by the door, his footsteps slow and deliberate as he walked in. "Hey," he said, like he'd just come home from a normal day. Like nothing had happened. His voice was quiet but too casual, like he was testing the air to see if I would bite. I didn't answer. I stayed seated, staring at the mug. The silence between us stretched so long it felt like another person in the room. I could hear him breathing behind me. Shallow, uneven breaths, like he knew he'd walked into something he couldn't smooth over. "Can we talk?" he asked, moving a little closer. I still didn't turn around. My fingers tapped the side of my phone slowly, a steady rhythmic click. "Talk to who?" I asked, my voice flat and distant. "Me or Katya?" That stopped him. I heard the sharp exhale like I'd punched the air right out of him. For a second I wondered if he'd actually leave. Just turn around, walk out the door and disappear. Part of me wanted him to. It would have been easier than looking him in the face. "Please, it's not what you think," he said, his voice closer now. I could feel him behind me. The warmth of his presence like a shadow that wouldn't leave. "Can you just let me explain?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Not what I think. So Katya calls in the middle of the night because she needs a weather update." He didn't answer. Of course he didn't. I turned around slowly, finally looking at him. His face was tired, dark circles under his eyes. Hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it on the drive home. He looked wrecked. "Good. Go ahead," I said, folding my arms. "Explain." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His jaw moved like he was chewing on the words, trying to figure out which lie would hurt me the least. I'd seen him use that face on his boss, on strangers, on cashiers when he pretended to care about their day. But he wasn't getting away with it this time. Not with me. "Do you love her?" I asked. My voice didn't crack. I thought it would, but it didn't. I felt stronger saying it than I had in days. "No," he said too quickly. His eyes widened, and he shook his head like I'd accused him of something ridiculous. "Of course not. I love you." The words sat between us, cold and empty. "Do you think I'm stupid?" I asked, stepping closer to him. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, but I kept my face calm. "You think I didn't see the way you panicked when I answered your phone? You think I didn't see the look on your face when she said your name? Babe, please. Don't call me that," I snapped, stepping back. My eyes didn't leave his. "You call her that too, don't you?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I could see it in his face. "I trusted you," I said softly, and that's when my voice finally broke. I hated it. I hated how small I sounded, how fragile. But I kept going. "I defended you to my friends when they told me you were acting different. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself you were tired. I made excuses for you." I felt my throat tighten, but I forced the words out. "But I'm done lying to myself. I'm done lying for you." He stepped forward. "Reaching for me like that would fix it all." "Please," he said, his voice cracking for the first time. "Please don't do this." I shook my head slowly, backing away from him step by step, until I was near the hallway. "I didn't do this," I said, voice firm now. "You did." He didn't move. He just stood there, hands hanging at his sides, his eyes following me like I was walking away with something he just realized he couldn't replace. But it was too late. It had been too late the moment he let her name into our house. I turned away from him, walking toward the bedroom, each step feeling lighter than the last. I didn't know what I'd do next. Pack a bag, leave, stay, scream into a pillow, it didn't matter. All I knew was that I wasn't his anymore. I wasn't anyone's but my own. Behind me I heard his voice one last time, soft, broken and desperate. "I'm sorry," he said. I stopped but didn't turn around. I didn't know him that. Yeah, I said quietly. Me too. And I kept walking. I didn't pack a bag that morning. I didn't storm out of the house in a dramatic rush. I didn't throw his clothes out the window or smash his phone. I just existed. Moved from room to room like a ghost in my own home. Touching the walls, the furniture, the things we built together. Or so I thought. It's strange how betrayal makes even familiar spaces feel foreign. The kitchen didn't feel like my kitchen. The living room didn't feel like mine. It was like every piece of this house had been tainted, stained with the weight of her name. Katya. It wasn't just her name anymore. It was a brand seared into every wall, every pillow, every photo frame. He was still there, lingering like a shadow. I could hear him pacing in the hallway, shuffling around, opening and closing drawers. I didn't ask what he was doing. I didn't care. At one point, I heard the creak of the closet door and the soft rustling of clothes being moved around. Packing maybe. Or pretending to. I didn't go look. Let him pack. Let him leave. For once I wasn't going to chase him. The hours ticked by. I made myself breakfast, not because I was hungry but because I needed to feel in control of something. Eggs, toast, coffee. Simple. Methodical. Crack, whisk, pour. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind spiraled in 1,000 different directions. Who is she? How long? Did they laugh at me? Did he tell her lies about me? Did she know about me from the beginning? Or worse, did she feel sorry for me? I sat at the kitchen table staring at my plate, the food going cold. I couldn't eat. I just kept playing every conversation Liam and I had in the last few months on a loop, searching for the moment I missed. The shift. The crack. When did he stop being mine? I kept thinking I could pinpoint it. Was it that night he came home late from work? The weekend he suddenly had a guy's trip with no warning? Or was it something quieter, like the way he stopped kissing me goodbye before he left for work? I ran my fingers through my hair, pulling at the roots until it hurt just a little. The pain was grounding. Pulled me out of my head. I needed that. I glanced toward the front door, half expecting him to walk out at any second, but he didn't. He just kept pacing in the bedroom. Maybe he was waiting for me to come in and beg for an explanation. Maybe he was waiting for me to scream. But I didn't. I wouldn't. At some point, I heard his voice from down the hall. Quiet, low, like he was talking to someone. My whole body went stiff, every nerve on edge. I put my coffee cup down slowly, straining my ears. He wasn't on the phone. No, it was quieter than that. Like he was whispering to himself. My heart started pounding as I got up from my chair, moving slowly, softly toward the hallway. Each step felt like a thunderclap in the silence of the house. I moved like a predator, careful, deliberate. The closer I got, the clearer his voice became. I know, he was muttering under his breath. His tone was raw, broken, like he was scolding himself. I'm an idiot. I know. I heard the creak of the bed frame like he'd sat down. I peeked around the corner and saw him sitting at the edge of the bed, head in his hands, elbows on his knees. His phone was in his lap, screen lit up. I couldn't see what was on it, but I could guess. He wasn't talking to himself. He was texting. I stepped forward slowly, deliberately, making sure he heard me this time. His head jerked up, eyes wide like a child caught stealing candy. He shoved the phone under his thigh like that would somehow erase everything I'd already seen. We locked eyes. No words. No sound. Just the deafening pulse of everything that hadn't been said. Go ahead, I said, tilting my head toward him. Text her back. I'm sure she's waiting. His jaw tensed, muscles working under his skin as he sucked in a sharp breath through his nose. Don't do this, okay? Please. Can we just what, Liam? I cut him off, taking a step forward. My voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Can we just go back to how things were? Pretend you didn't humiliate me? Pretend you didn't let another woman call you at 2:30 in the morning, while I was sleeping next to you. My hands were trembling now, but I didn't hide it. Let him see. Let him feel it. Can we pretend that every single night you laid in this bed with me, you weren't thinking about her? His eyes closed slowly, like he was trying to shut out the truth. But he couldn't. Not anymore. It wasn't like that, he muttered. Then tell me what it was like, Liam. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. Tell me how it felt sneaking around. Did it feel good? Did it make you feel powerful? Did you feel like a man knowing you had me at home while you were God knows where with her? My breathing was shallow now, my chest tight with the weight of it all. He didn't answer. He just shook his head like a man defeated. It wasn't like that, he whispered again. Then what was it like? I stepped closer. Say it out loud. Go on. Look me in the eyes and say it. He looked up at me slowly, eyes glassy and bloodshot. For the first time I saw him as small. Small and weak. Not the man I'd loved. Not the man I'd built a life with. Just a boy too afraid to own up to his mistakes. I don't know, he said, his voice barely a breath. I laughed. A real sharp, bitter laugh. You don't know? You don't know why you threw away everything we had for a woman who doesn't even have the decency to hang up when your wife answers the phone. I shook my head, wiping at my eyes even though no tears had fallen. Pathetic. You're pathetic, Liam. He stood up suddenly, hands raised like he was surrendering. I know, okay? I know. I screwed up.
I'm a mess.
I was stupid and I didn't think. That's the problem, Liam, I said, stepping back from him. You never think. You only think about yourself. You didn't think about me. You didn't think about us. He opened his mouth like he had something profound to say, but nothing came. Nothing ever comes when the truth is already out in the open. He rubbed his hands down his face, exhaling like he'd been holding it in for hours. I love you, he said finally, like that was supposed to fix it. I tilted my head, studying him like I didn't recognize him anymore. No, you don't, I said quietly, shaking my head. You love the way I love you. You love having someone at home who believes in you, who defends you, who makes you feel like a good man. I took a step back toward the door, keeping my eyes on him. But I'm done being that person for you. I'm done making you feel better about yourself, while you make me feel like I'm not enough. I walked out of the bedroom, my steps slow but steady. This time he didn't follow me. I went straight to the front closet and pulled out my coat. My fingers moved quickly, grabbing my bag, my keys, whatever I needed. He didn't call after me. He didn't say a word. He knew better. By the time I reached the front door, I paused for just a moment, my hand resting on the handle. My eyes stayed forward. You deserve Katya, I said without turning around. She's exactly your level. Then I walked out. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. The cold air hit me like a slap, but it felt good. It felt clean. I kept walking step after step, the weight on my chest slowly lifting with every breath. I wasn't afraid of being alone. Not anymore. I had already been alone for a long time. I just didn't know it. The cold air wrapped around me like a shock of reality, sharp and biting but honest. Honest was good. I needed honest. For too long, I'd been living in the fog of maybe and what if. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking it. What if I'm wrong? What if I ruin everything over nothing? But it wasn't nothing. It had never been nothing. I knew it the moment I saw her name. Katya. A name I'd never forget, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. The moment I realized I was the only one fighting for this marriage. My footsteps echoed on the pavement as I walked aimlessly through the quiet streets. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to move. To feel the weight of each step, to remind myself that I was still here. Still breathing. Still alive. I pulled my coat tighter around me, shivering as the wind cut through the thin fabric. It was too cold to be wandering around like this, but I didn't want to go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The sun was starting to rise, streaking the sky with pale pinks and purples. It should have been beautiful. On any other day, I might have stopped to admire it. But not today. Today it felt like the world was mocking me. How could the sky be so calm, so perfect, while everything inside me was falling apart? I kept walking, hands shoved deep in my coat pockets, head down against the wind. I ended up at a park. It wasn't far from our house, his house, but it felt like another world. The swings hung still in the early morning breeze, chains creaking softly. The playground was empty, of course. No children at this hour. Just me. I sat on one of the benches, cold metal biting through my jeans, but I didn't care. My breath came out in sharp clouds, little puffs of white that disappeared as quickly as they came. I stared at the ground, watching a stray leaf tumble by, twisting and flipping on the concrete path. It had no control over where it went. The wind decided that for it. And for a moment I felt like that leaf, tossed around by forces bigger than me. No direction. No control. Just trying to land somewhere, anywhere. I sat like that for a while, long enough for my fingers to go numb from the cold. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. My heart jumped in my chest like it always did when I thought it might be him. I didn't want it to be him. I didn't want to hear his voice, his apologies, his excuses. But when I pulled the phone out, it wasn't him. It was Megan. I stared at the screen for a second, blinking away the sting in my eyes. Megan was my best friend, had been for years. She'd seen me through breakups, new jobs, family drama, all of it. Part of me didn't want to answer. I didn't want to say the words out loud. Saying them would make it real. But another part of me, the part that didn't want to sit on this bench alone, pressed accept. "Hey," I said, my voice hoarse and rough like I'd been screaming. "Jesus, you sound awful," Megan replied, her voice clear, warm, and familiar. "You okay?" I could have lied. I could have said, "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired," the way I had so many times before. But I was too tired for lies. Too tired for pretending. "No," I said, my voice cracking on the word. "No, I'm not okay." There was silence on the other end, but not the bad kind. The kind where someone's listening, really listening. I could picture her sitting on her couch, eyes narrowed, waiting for me to keep talking. "What happened?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes, trying to find a version of the story that didn't make me sound pathetic. But there wasn't one. There was only the truth. "Liam's been cheating on me," I said, my voice so flat it didn't even sound like me. "Her name's Katya. She called in the middle of the night. Twice." The silence stretched just a little too long. I knew she was trying to hold back whatever curse word had just come to mind. "Are you serious?" she finally said, her voice sharp now, laced with anger. "He's cheating on you with someone who's bold enough to call him at night while you're there?" "Yeah," I muttered, rubbing my hands together to warm them. "Guess she's got guts." "She's got something, all right," Megan snapped. "Nerve. Stupidity. Audacity. What about him? Did he confess, or is he still playing dumb?" I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and sharp. "He tried. Said it wasn't what I thought. Then he said he didn't know why he did it." "Classic. Unbelievable," Megan muttered, and I could hear her pacing through the phone. "What do you want to do? Do you want me to come get you? We'll throw all his stuff on the lawn and change the locks. I'll bring the wine and matches." That actually made me smile. Megan always knew how to throw gasoline on the fire. But I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "No. I don't want to give him that kind of attention. He's not worth the show." "Damn right he's not," she said, her voice fierce with loyalty. "So what's next? You going back to the house?" The question hit me harder than I expected. Was I going back? Did I even want to? I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. Part of me wanted to go back just to prove I still could. It was still my house too, wasn't it? But the other part of me, the part that had been carrying all this weight for so long, just wanted to be done. "I don't know," I admitted, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. I didn't remember starting to cry, but the tears were there, hot against the cold wind. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "You don't have to know right now," Megan said gently, her voice like a soft blanket wrapping around me. "You don't have to have a plan today, tomorrow, or even next week. Just don't go back to him. Please promise me that." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the swings, at the way the chains rattled softly in the breeze. The whole world was still moving. Cars were driving by in the distance. Birds flapped overhead. The world didn't stop just because mine did. "I promise," I said, and this time I meant it. "I'm not going back to him." "Good," Megan said, her voice full of relief. "Come to my place. Stay as long as you need. I'll make pancakes and we can watch terrible reality TV." I smiled again, for real this time. "That sounds perfect." "Good, then it's settled. I'm texting you the address. Come now." I'm not taking no for an answer. "Okay," I said softly. "I'm coming." We hung up, and I sat there for another minute, letting the weight of it all settle into place. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. I could feel the shift like a crack of light in a sealed room. I wiped my face, pulled my coat tighter, and stood. By the time I got to her apartment, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Megan opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, her arms wide open, ready to pull me in without a single question. I let her. I let myself be held. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. We sat on her couch for hours, eating pancakes and watching trashy TV, just like she promised. Every now and then my phone would buzz on the coffee table, and I knew it was him. I didn't check. I didn't care. I knew what he'd say anyway.
I'm sorry.
But sorry wasn't enough. Never would be. Later that night I blocked his number. And when I finally lay down on Megan's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like clean laundry and friendship, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. For the first time in forever, I didn't dream about him. I didn't dream about Katya. I didn't dream at all. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of soft clanging in the kitchen. It took me a second to remember where I was. The couch beneath me felt unfamiliar. The ceiling looked different. And for a brief, blissful moment I forgot everything.
No Katya. No Liam.
No midnight phone calls. Just warmth, quiet, and the smell of coffee brewing. But reality has a cruel way of catching up. It hit me like a slow, creeping chill. The kind you feel when you realize you've left the window open on a freezing night. I squeezed my eyes shut and took a deep breath, letting it fill my chest before slowly letting it out. I told myself I wouldn't cry today. No more tears for him. Morning, sleeping beauty, Megan called from the kitchen. Her voice was light, but I could hear the undercurrent of concern. She was trying not to treat me like glass, but I could feel it. Morning, I muttered, my voice rough from sleep. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face with both hands. I probably looked like a mess, hair tangled, eyes swollen from the night before, but I didn't care. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Not anymore. Megan appeared in the doorway, holding a mug of coffee like an offering. She handed it to me and sat down next to me, tucking her legs under her. She didn't say anything right away. She just sat with me, letting the quiet fill the space. That's the thing about best friends, they don't rush you. They know when silence is more healing than words. Thanks, I said, taking a sip. It was hot, bitter, and perfect. Don't thank me, she said, nudging me with her elbow. I'm just doing my job as your self-appointed guardian angel. She grinned, but I could see her watching me carefully, waiting to see if I'd break. I'm fine, I said before she could ask. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't a lie either. I wasn't okay, but I was awake. I was breathing. That was the start. Sure you are, she said, raising an eyebrow. That's why you're drinking your coffee like it owes you money. I looked down at my hands, realizing I was gripping the mug a little too hard. I loosened my hold and leaned back against the couch. I'm fine, Meg, I said again, quieter this time. Or at least I will be. She nodded, her eyes narrowing like she was assessing me, deciding if I really meant it. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice low and serious. Good. Because if you're even thinking about going back to him, I will personally throw all your stuff into my car and drive you to another state. I snorted, almost choking on my coffee. Relax, I'm not going back. Damn right, you're not, she said, pointing at me like a coach giving a pep talk. Men like him don't change. They just get sneakier. Her words stuck with me more than I wanted them to. They just get sneakier. I wondered if that was true. Would he try to win me back with promises? Would he tell me he'd changed, that he'd learned his lesson, that he'd never do it again? The thought made my stomach twist. I knew the script already. It was as old as time. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. You're the one I really love. I'd seen it happen to other people, friends, coworkers, even my own sister. But I'd never thought it would happen to me. It's funny how you can think you're special. Like your love is somehow different, untouchable. Turns out love isn't bulletproof. It shatters just like anything else. Do you think I was stupid for not seeing it sooner? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. I hated how vulnerable I sounded, like a child asking if they did something wrong. Megan's eyes softened. No, she said firmly. Don't do that to yourself. You trusted him. That's not stupid, that's love. He's the one who's stupid. Her words hit me harder than they should have. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. I didn't want to cry anymore.